Every time I'm home, I'm whole. I love nothing more than being home. And the fact that our leaders don't understand that so many of us wants to be back home. We just need them to be better leaders.
My people, many of us in the diaspora dream of returning home to Africa, whether it's to build, invest, or partner in the growth of our nations. We want to be a part of the transformation, the solution, contributing our experience and expertise to a future that we know is possible. But here's the thing: what happens when you return, ready to give your all, only to be met with a system that's already rigged against you? What happens when the very people you're trying to help turn their backs on you, betray you, bet against you? That's the unfortunate dilemma faced by my guest on the show today. In 2009, Fanta Kamara, a young Liberian American woman, answered President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's call for the diaspora to return and help rebuild Liberia. She said she left a lucrative job in the US and threw herself into the waste management sector in Liberia, only to discover the very system she aimed to support was entrenched in corruption, collusion, and a bureaucracy that was stacked against her. She led a fight against the government, bringing the corruption to light. But today, that same corruption is rearing its head in a new $210 million waste management deal. Yes, Fanta says it will be one of the most dangerous foreign contracts Liberia will ever sign, one that completely shuts out local companies, hands the reins to a Ghanaian firm with a controversial past, and risks stealing 200,000 jobs from Liberian youth. She says this isn't just about waste. It's about power, integrity, and a system where African governments too often choose foreign firms over their own people. But here's the twist. This isn't China or France swooping in, right? This is an African company, Zum Lion, from Ghana. So, my people, what happens when Africans start exploiting each other? Can you call it Pan-Africanism if it benefits the elite but excludes the people? Fanta's story is one of shock, yes, but also resilience, resistance, and a fierce fight for what's right. It's a challenge to all of us, because if we're serious about building a better Africa, it starts with us, holding our leaders accountable, speaking up when it's uncomfortable, and being unafraid to challenge the system. That's what Fanta did, and this is why her story needs to be told. Today, Fanta Kamara joins me to tell her story in an exclusive interview, and together, we'll unpack what unfolded and what's now at stake with Liberia's $210 million waste management contract, where 6 companies are shortlisted, all of them foreign entities. Before we get into the interview, I'd like to thank all of our new subscribers and members for joining us. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe, tap the alert, and join the family. And please share our channel with your group chats and help us get to 1 million subs quickly so we can continue bringing you the unfiltered truth, more stories that matter. And if you enjoy this particular episode, like, leave a comment, and drop a super thanks to support our channel and help get our content prioritized on YouTube. Also on Saturday, I am excited to be premiering my exclusive face-to-face sit-down interview with the lead architect of the African Continental Free Trade Area and former presidential candidate of Ghana, Honorable Alan Tremateng. And I'd love for you to join us. This is a conversation you won't want to miss. All right, now, let's get into it. Hello, Fanta. Welcome to the breakdown. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Hi, Sandra. How are you doing?
I'm great. And thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us. So let's start at the beginning, right, Fanta, and not with the scandal, but with you. because before this deal made headlines, you were in the system, working as a contractor for the government of Liberia. So tell us about your background and what brought you into the waste management space in Liberia, and what kind of work you were doing with the government before things went left.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again for having me, Sandra. My background is in global communications, technology, primarily, and I would describe, I think, my professional experience as a problem solver and really one who chases challenges. I thrive in ambiguity, gray areas. In fact, I get bored very easily. So I tend to lean towards more technical and complex areas. So I'll primarily say technology, global comm, and everything else in between. A few years ago, when Ellen Johnson became, the first freaking lady president, or woman president, I should say, she did a tour globally calling for all Liberians who were in the diaspora to return to Liberia and really help to rehabilitate the country, right? Really help to rebuild the country.
Right.
This was a call that all of us took, or most of us took, very very seriously. At the time, I believe I was in Italy for Fashion Week. I had a friend who lived in Boston, and he was already in Liberia, and we were discussing this, right? What are we going to do with the president's call to go back and contribute? So, long story short, we took it very seriously. The two of us were like, well, I mean, there's this waste tender coming up with the World Bank, and we know any country who's just going through a rebuilding process, waste management is often the forgotten portion of that rebuilding, and most young people wouldn't focus on that area in terms of contribution. But for some reason, we were intrigued by it, and we decided that's how we are going to contribute. So I literally took a backpack and left Italy, and said I was going to go for 2 weeks to assess the situation, heeding the president's call. So I went back to Liberia. Let's say that 2 weeks turned into 5 years. I never returned home to Philadelphia. My entire apartment and everything I treasured was auctioned. I made that sacrifice for my country, due to the call of my president at the time. And so we threw ourselves into the waste management industry, really trying to understand and learn it back and forth. And we did really well at that. When we were first awarded the World Bank contract, it was short-term contract, so 3 months here, 6 months there. And coming in with fresh eyes, we suggested to the World Bank, this is not going to be sustainable. If you're looking to truly build out this waste management industry for Liberia, you also extend the contracts to where it's longer, and it allows the contractors to acquire assets, take out loans and build capacity. Let's say after being very persistent, they agreed to extend the contract long term. So about 3 years in that long term contract, which had gone from 3 months, 6 months to now about 3 years, was being tendered. And we had a really great working relationship with the city of Monrovia, the mayor at the time, where she would call us very early in the morning to use our equipment. So we didn't have an equipment or capacity issue, because we had spent the 3 years understanding the industry, building capacity, really fostering those very, very important stakeholders relationships. So once we learned the tender was going to be out, we were very excited, along with the other two Liberian companies who were in the industry. And we went to purchase the tender. We learned that, well, the contract has already been awarded. What do you mean
Wow.
it has already been awarded? And then we found out it was awarded to Zum Lion. So of course, we began investigating and realized that was collusion. We went to the mayor and confronted her, and she pretty much gave us a very cold shoulder, and became very, very distant. This was someone who we had a very warm relationship with. So she put us off, and we decided, well, we're not going to sit back, because, as I mentioned, I literally sacrificed my entire life,
Right.
my
Right.
partner, in Boston. So we're going to pursue this. And so we petitioned the House of Representatives with their, claims and grievances. And they set up a committee to hear our grievances, but did nothing about it. And so we weren't deterred. We went to the House of Senate, and they too didn't do anything about it. So our next strategy was, look, you're saying in Liberian companies do not have the capacity to carry out this waste project as we have been doing for years now, since 2008. We're going to show you. So the intention was to block the entire city with our equipment, demonstrating just that, right? Here are the equipment you don't have. We take that very bold.
Well, what exactly were they looking for that they claim that local Liberian companies didn't have? Was there anything specific in the tender that they were looking for?
Yeah, it's always this lean on, and this is so common. We see this across Africa. Whenever there is a lucrative contract, right? All of a sudden, you have a lot of eyes on it, and we suspected at the time there were a lot of kickbacks happening. So they had to come up with an excuse. And the excuse they came up with was Liberian companies are too small for this, essentially. You guys cannot do this. You don't have the capacity to do this. And what the
Well, how about empowering those companies, even if they're small, to be able to do the job? What happened to that? Empowering our own?
Yeah, my sentiment, exactly. And our sentiment, of course, at the time, we're like, look, because when you reference capacity, it's about equipment, right? Collecting, transporting the waste, which was what the contract was about at the time. Understanding like the landfill and engaging with the folks at the landfill, the disposal of the waste and all of that. So we have been doing this. We were not new to the industry. We have been doing this for 3 years now. So to come in and try to give that excuse, they knew perhaps if it was like a normal Liberian, it was going to truly affect them, impact them. They were going to not have probably the courage to stand up. But we were very, very enthusiastic, and we were like, no, we have worked so hard for this. And most especially, the first female president of Liberia, of Africa, right? First woman president, happened to be from Liberia. She called us to come back home, and this was our way of contributing. How dare you tell us we don't have the capacity after we've demonstrated it time and time again, only because now the contract is lucrative. You want to award it to an entity who has not been in our industry. So long story short, we were going to demonstrate, and we had BBC, CNN ready to cover as we were marking the posters. We get a call from the Minister of State, so the president's office, and he says the president wants to see you. And we're like, no, we have gone to the House of Representatives, we've gone to the Senate. I'm sure she's heard about this right now. It's been in the media. Why hasn't she intervened? But now she's learned that this is going to get international coverage. She doesn't want the backlash, right? So now she's calling for a truce, and we declined initially. And then they called back, and I looked at my partner and I said, let's oblige, let's go hear what she has to say. So they came, oh, we told you and you never, right, showed up. So we attended this session. It was 5 people. It was myself, my partner at the time, the city mayor, the Minister of State, and the president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And here we are in this conference room, and I began to make the presentation and present her with evidence as to what we've been doing, how we have been increasing our capacity, and how we've prepared for this moment. We heeded her call, right? This is the moment where you further build and empower us as a Liberian entity.
Right.
In the middle of my presentation, she looks at me and go, I think you should be my campaign manager. And I said, Madam President,
what?
With all due respect, I've just related to you. I've sacrificed my entire. Think about you live in, the city of Philadelphia, in the poshest or most luxurious apartment, and you literally take a backpack to say, I'm going for 2 weeks, to wherever, and you never return for 5 years. Literally throw yourself into problem solving to build this industry. I'm trying to illustrate this to her, and she interjects me with that. And I responded, my goal right now is to focus on building this industry. I absolutely appreciate your offer, but this is more important right now because it impacts the entire country. My partner goes to do his presentation, and He says, look, Madam President, this is about principle. And she turns around and look at both of us. I would never forget this. And she said, can you eat principle? Is principle going to put food on your table?
Hmm.
Oh, just forget about this contract. I'm going to give you guys a smaller contract in Buchanan. Buchanan is a smaller city in Liberia. And we were stunned. We were
Wow.
flabbergasted. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the room because here we are, first we've heeded her call. We've abandoned our lives. We've made this sacrifice, and we've dug in. I mean, I at the time worked for the Estee Lauder company, so from the fashion beauty world,
Hmm.
um, heading their global communications for Mac and Bobby Brown. So imagine that girl, between like in the East Coast, New York, PA, right, in Milan for Fashion Week, um, having received this call, taking it to heart. Your president wants you to come back home and help rebuild the country. Been thrown into waste management. It's like day and night. But I was so dedicated to understanding and to really solving the problem. As I said, being a problem solver. You would not, if anyone from that world, right, was to say this is Fanta, you would not recognize me. I was immersed into everything waste management. I mean, from frequent trips to the landfills, understanding the different earth moving equipments, D9s, dozers, 966. I mean,
Hmm.
everything under the sun, we learned it, understood it. So it was so heartbreaking, so disheartening to hear directly from our president to say, "Well, you can't eat principle. Just forget about this contract." We came to
How do you
find
reckon, Fanta? How do you reckon with what was happening? I mean, what was going on?
we
And
were
yeah,
we
go for it.
were we were thrown. It's as if you work up to this moment for your life, right? I think the equivalent would be you've gone to high school, you've gone to college, you've gone and you've gone to grad school, right? Gotten your MBA, and here you are, like you've done all this work um, for this moment, and the one person who can make the difference to say, look, I'm going to honor my call when I travel to New York and I travel the globe calling for Liberians to come back home. You too took heed to that. I'm going to be honorable, especially as a woman, right? Who's supposed to be nurturing. I mean, everyone was so excited that found me, right? There is a woman president, so she's going to be different from the normal, uh, patriarchal, right, system that we're used to. This is going to be different. And no, she was worse. She was worse. So we didn't stop there.
Hmm.
We took up our case to DC. We got in touch with some friends in Boston and we petitioned the World Bank in DC. This was unprecedented. When I say, look, the World Bank knows that corruption happens, right? They know that collusion happens, but no one had been able to gather the amount of evidence that was so overwhelming to convince them to put a team of 4 or 5 senior corruption officials on the flight from DC to a small, tiny country in Liberia to investigate collusion between the Liberian government and Zum
Hmm.
Lion. And that
Hmm.
happened, right? After several petitions, that happened. They came down, investigated, and found that there was collusion, there was corruption. And Zum Lion, the evidence was so overwhelming until Zum Lion themselves admitted to paying bribes to the Liberian government to be awarded the contract. This was how damning this was. And so the World Bank banned them, they barred them from ever bidding from any World Bank contracts for um,
Hmm.
in 2013, and it was a punch in the stomach, a blow in the face, standing across your president and her telling you you can't eat principle. There's nothing you can do about this. You're the little guys. Take this little contract. Forget about this one that you've been working so hard for. Yes, I said you can come back and work, but I really didn't mean that. I just wanted to appease the international community. Whatever her justification was, it was deceptive. It was heartbreaking. It
Hmm.
was heart wrenching. And I remember we cried. we were so shook to the point where we were in disbelief for a few days and couldn't believe
Yeah.
that the one
Yeah.
person that we had made the decision to come back and help our country for was standing in
Yeah.
our face telling us. But the World Bank did the right thing by taking a call, looking at the evidence, and banning Zum Lion.
So what happened with that contract with between Liberia and Zum Lion? Did it proceed? I mean, I know the World Bank investigated the case,
Mhm.
but what happened after that? Did the investigation impact anything at all?
So what I learned was that the government of Liberia petitioned the World Bank to allow Zum Lion to finish out their contract.
Okay.
Now, if
So
that
they didn't lose the contract. It
no,
continued.
so they have lost the initial portion, but they have begun work already. So they allowed them to finish the work that was being done. So it wasn't just left halfway. And even that work that was being done, well, that was supposed to get done, did not get done.
Hmm.
The landfill, they left the landfill um, in a much more terrible condition than they met it. And we came to find out much later that Ellen John, the person who was responsible for bringing Zum Lion to Liberia, was a dear friend or is a dear friend of Ellen Johnson. At the time, we didn't know that, but in retrospect, we understood why she wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
budge. That this was a very, very close friend of hers who was partnering with Zum Lion, who was not in the waste industry. So collusion to bring Zum Lion in, and this person is Abdullah Sharif, who currently serves on her presidential library or nonprofit organization. His profile is currently on her website.
I
So,
see.
and Zum Lion was the one who connected the dots, saying, because we kept pushing back, you're not familiar with the industry. What are you doing here? And they said, well, our partner was Abdullah Sharif. And Abdullah Sharif is a very good friend of Ellen Johnson, served in her government, and continue to maintain that relationship even after her presidency. So this was a huge, huge, huge deal. It hadn't been done before. To have this much evidence against an entity for corruption, and then actually being barred, and then to find out that the same thing is happening in Ghana, like as well, right? Like with this
Yeah.
company, and now they're trying to go after other African countries. And my goal and objective is really to discourage other African nations from doing business with this company, because if you're a Pan Africanist, right, and you're saying, I'm for Africa, right, and I want to expand across Africa to help Africa because we're Africans, we welcome that. But be an upstanding company, right?
Hmm.
Your brother, your sisters. We're not xenophobic. In fact, there are tons of Ghanaians like doing business in Liberia, tons of other countries doing business in Liberia. My brother-in-law is Ghanaian. My
Mm,
two
mm.
brother-in-laws are Ghanaian. So it's like, look, we love our brothers and sisters, but be upright, right? Serve the people. Don't be conniving. Don't collude against the people, because when you engage in that level of corruption, the people who suffer are the marginalized, are the
Yeah.
impoverished, and they don't
A-
realize that.
and your story is not isolated, right, Fanta? Because there are a lot of people like you from the diaspora, right, who, like you, are heed or want to heed to the calling of return home, come back, help us build. And the reality is, when they return home, they deal with this type of corruption and so I just want to. What do you have to say to African governments? Especially those who are looking to the diaspora and are saying, "Come back home," but the reality on the ground, it just makes things really difficult. What do you have to say to them?
I applaud President Mahama for the step that he took. I know there was some public push, from the Ghanaian people, but he took a step to say no. While you've been doing business here for 19 years, Zum Lion, you have been found way too many times of corruption, of not doing well by the Ghanaian people. I mean, for example, so their contract essentially was where they were paid a $65 management fee by the government, for each waste management personnel. Let's just put it that way. And they took $46 and give them only $19 per month. That's slavery
Wow.
in this day and age. That's modern day slavery. In 2025, you justify paying someone $19 a month to collect waste every day. That is slavery. That is
Whew.
slavery. So I applaud President Muhammad for standing up and saying no while you're one of our own. It's not about that. It's about being serviceable to the people. It's about setting the right precedent, the right examples. We ought to be better, right? We ought to uplift our standards as Africans if we ever stand a chance to compete and be taken seriously. So kudos to him for that. And I will say to other African leaders, follow that example, right? Follow that example for the first time. If you've never been a person of principle or upstanding, it's not too late, right? Because this is not our home. We
Hmm.
are, most of us didn't come here willingly, right? Most of us was due to war, was due to seeking better socioeconomic opportunities. For me, it was
Yeah.
with the Civil War, right? I mean, I had no
Hmm.
voice. I was a kid when I was brought here, and as an adult, I yearn so much to be back home.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
Every time I'm home, I'm whole. I love nothing more um, than being home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the fact that our leaders don't understand that so many of us, so many of us wants to be back home. We just need them to be better leaders. We need them to be principled. We need them to do the right thing because we will never be here forever. We can never be here forever, right? This is someone else's land. We're here because of their mistakes, right? We're here because they didn't do the right things in the first place. So I think this is an opportunity for them to do the right thing. And I would say to my brothers and sisters across the diaspora, irrespective of what passports you have, where you're born, where your parents are born will always be your home.
Hmm.
You can create a comfortable space elsewhere to survive, but there will always be that yearning of belonging, and you belong nowhere else but on the continent. You will feel completely whole. There is nowhere else you can feel more whole, let me put it that way, than on the continent. And it's going to take this generation. I'm truly feeling that way. It's truly going to take
Yeah.
our generation to really push for that transformative leadership, right? That we're so desperately seeking. Perhaps it's going to take us, right? We shouldn't always be looking to, the older leaders who, frankly,
Mm-hmm.
are getting older, right? Like they should be retired. I mean, they're pre-retirement, essentially retirement age. We cannot sit back and say and leave our future to them because too many of the decisions they're making, we are the largest group who are being impacted. We are in the majority. So to make it make sense that the minority is making decisions for the majority while we sit back and
Hmm.
feel less enthusiastic to participate, we should be active participants and active stakeholders in the administrations of our nation. It is not up to them. It's if not us, then who? If not now, then when? We cannot continue to export our problems. We have to be our own problem solvers because no one understands us and our problems better than we do. And I think that time is.
Whew. Fanta, I mean, I feel your pain, right? I feel your pain. And this is what we talk about constantly on the show, on the breakdown. It's how we build real strength and power from the ground up. And I agree with what you're saying that leadership, right, is so critical. But and in so many ways, leadership in Africa has failed us, right? But I have faith in the people. Mm-hmm. And I think now more than ever, this is the time for us to have faith in ourselves, that the leadership is a reflection of us because we elect those people into positions of power. Mm-hmm. So I commend you for what you've done. You could have, chosen to remain silent. Many people do. Many people go back home, and when they deal with, corruption and the challenges on the ground, they pack their bags and they return home and they stay silent. But they give up. They never return. And we miss out on their talent. We miss out on their expertise. Mm-hmm. We miss out on their investments. So you chose a different, route, and I want to commend you for that. This is a great example, I think, for people in the diaspora that to know that we're not powerless. We're not powerless, and we can have a voice. And I really wanted to give you the platform to share your story because I think it's a story that we need to hear, especially now. So I commend you for that. Now, you've been I want you to, because the timeline is important, right? And I think one of the reasons why you're speaking out again now is because Zum Lion is back in the quote game again, or it's trying to pursue a new contract, another waste management contract in Liberia, correct? So tell us about what is happening now, right? And how this is raising another red flag for you and for Liberians.
Yeah. So there's a $210 million tender that was put out for an integrated waste management system. And this was put out just right after the mayor of Monrovia and Painesville, which is another city in Liberia, traveled to Ghana at the expense of Zum Lion. And when they returned, they drafted this tender in very poor fashion and poor taste. This is supposed to be a tender that should be open to the public, right? And it was not. They shortlisted six foreign companies, none of which were Liberians. There are no mandates in the tender to partner with Liberian companies. There are no mandate in the tenders to hire Liberians. There are no mandate in the tenders to build any type of Liberian capacity. And At the top of that list is Zum Lion. They have been pushing very, very hard to award this contract to Zum Lion. And when I learned about this, I said, look, if this is the hill I die on, this is the hill I die on. I will absolutely not sit back and not sit idle and allow this entity who is riddled with corruption, right, from Ghana to Nigeria to Liberia, be reintegrated, right? Come back into Liberia and try to pursue this contract, because this could mean 200,000 jobs. I know the initial estimate we did was around 50,000 jobs. So this could be 200,000 jobs for Liberians. And while, once again, right, our president traveled to Washington and the globe, with his arrest agenda, talking about really providing job opportunities for the youth, creating employment with such high unemployment rate at this day and age. Why would you not take the opportunity to give such a contract, or at least open a contract to the Liberian public for bidding,
right,
and allow them to build their capacity, to build this middle class, to cut or slash your high unemployment rate? The youth we find today who are in the majority, once again, 80% across Africa, 80% youth in Liberia, in the majority, they do everything right? They pursue their education. So they go to high school, they graduate, they go to college, they graduate, and they sit at home, no jobs, nothing. Why is it that, once again, our leaders don't understand this gap that they're creating, this exodus that is happening with youth? Every single opportunity they get, they flee. We're losing our human capital when we should be empowering them, when we should be enriching them, when we should be rehabilitating where those gaps are, especially with those who have trauma. Look at what's happening. Most of them are turning to drugs. Most of them.
Now, Fanta, so what's interesting is this is happening now under a new administration,
The new
right?
administration, who was the vice president for the former administration?
Right. So, I mean, this seems like it's a systemic issue, right?
Yeah,
The same company is back at the table again. I mean, what, six countries who are bidding for this $210 million deal, all of them are I mean, six companies, all of them are foreign companies. So are you saying, what are they saying, that there is not even one
yeah,
local company that has the capacity?
yeah. It
Is
is.
that
Is despicable. It is lazy. It is irresponsible. In fact, the companies that are on that list are companies from Dubai, so a Middle Eastern company. You have a Chinese company. You have an Indian company. You have a Bermuda a company from Bermuda, so the Caribbeans, and then you have Zum Lion. And I think there's another one like on there, but none of them are Liberian companies. And once again, this is their excuse. Liberian companies don't have the capacity. And there are, of course, entities like the PPCC who are responsible for ensuring, for reviewing these public tenders, ensuring that, especially when it comes to public service, we're not, this contract is not about building a rocket, a spaceship, right? Like a rocket ship. It's not about building like a nuclear plant. It's not as if Liberians are unfamiliar with collecting waste. It's it's akin to, right? It's akin to say like New York saying, "Oh, London, come and claim my waste. I'm incapable. I can't find anyone in all of New
hmm,
York to pick up my waste. So please come and claim my waste, London." It's like Shanghai saying, "Please, Johannesburg, come claim my waste." The justification is so idiotic. It is upsetting that our leaders constantly, because of their low self-esteem, they project that onto the population. So therefore, because they're incapacitated, they're incapable, they deem the population incapable and incapacitated. When
hmm,
we know Africans to be amongst the most intelligent people, even if we don't know how to do something, we'll figure out how to do it. You don't have to tell us twice, right? Yeah, there are some of us like who are lackadaisical, fine. But most of us, the majority of us, right? We're entrepreneurs, we're problem solvers, right? When we are presented the opportunity, we take advantage of it. So for you to laugh in our face time and time again, it is despicable. And the people have to understand across Africa, because I know Zum Lion has since, in the last 5 months, since Ghana banned them for corruption and treating their employees like slaves, they have been targeting other African nations. In the last 5, 6 months, they've traveled to Kenya, they've traveled to Rwanda, they've traveled to Burkina Faso, they have traveled to the Gambia. Now they're in Liberia. And I know for a fact, if this is the hill I die on, this is the hill I die
hmm.
on. Zum Lion would never be awarded that contract in Liberia, and I will absolutely make sure to it. I have nothing with me but God. I believe in nothing. I believe nothing can make this happen but God. So it is not my will or like my power, is the power of God. I'm absolutely convicted in that. So I'm pushing very hard, and now it's really gaining a lot of steam in Liberia. The Senate actually recently put a stay on the tender and demanded for the mayors to come and justify why they have structured the tender in this way. So with God, work is happening in
Good.
Liberia to ban that. The reason
Mm,
why, part of what I really wanted to do this sit down is to warn my African brothers and sisters. We are not objecting or well, I know we don't object to doing business with other entities, with foreign entities, and we should not, right? We should encourage FDI, we should work with other African companies. But where that company is riddled with corruption, is riddled with bribery, is riddled with
mm.
malpractice, is riddled with misappropriation, is riddled with all of these unethical
Yeah.
things, we should
Yeah.
say no. So Burkina Faso say no to Zum Lion. You know, Ghana has said no to Zum Lion. Liberia is gonna say no to Zum Lion. Kenya should say no to Zum Lion. The
Mm.
Gambia should say no to Zum Lion, right? Zum Lion had a chance to clean up their act. Mind you, when we submitted our grievances with the World Bank, this was in 2013. We're in 2025 and they're using the same tactics. They're bribing our media to go and do promotional videos for them. They're bribing our governmental officials, right? The representatives, the House of Senate, and we see that, right? We didn't have that visibility back then. Now I do. Now we do. We understand their playbook. I mean, when you even look at their website, it is such a fake site. If you just try to navigate and maybe like spend 5 minutes really pushing on for where it says read more or expand or get more information, you will see that most of those links like take you to nowhere, especially when you go to explore their expansion, where all the countries that they say they're in, and you go to read more. Some of the photos are very similar. The same photo they show in Nigeria is the same of their recycling plant. It's the same photo like they show in Liberia, and that plant does not exist in Liberia. They claim to be partners with Harvard. They're not partners with Harvard in any way, shape, or form. I have a graduate certificate in sustainable business management, like from Harvard. They're not partnered with Harvard. I can tell you that. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to uncover that. That they had the opportunity to be better, to say, you know what, we accept this, we made a mistake. Since 2013, we're gonna do better. They didn't do that. 2025, they were banned for corruption in Ghana. 2025, they're engaged. They're engaged in corruption in Liberia. In fact, one of the media entities that I went on to do interview, they after the day after I appeared, they bribed them to go and do promotional videos for them. So they haven't learned from this. If they have learned, it's another thing, right? We can give them a second chance. It happened. They're still engaged in their same old tricks, and Africa has to be principled. We have to say no. This is not a representation of us. We don't want this brand of corruption. Everyone has a level of corruption, but not blatant like this. To say what do you do about it? We dare you. And in Liberia, I'm saying no to Zum Lion, and you should too as well.
And I think there's also something to be said about partnerships that come at the expense of our own people, right? And that's really what's happening here, because even if Zum Lion wasn't, as you're saying, allegedly corrupt, right? They're still a foreign company, and we're all for Pan-Africanism, but if it's going to cost Liberians, how many jobs? 50,000, 200,000 jobs, right? I mean, and I think that's a big part of the conversation, right? Is as we look to form new strategic partnerships on the continent, I think it's important that we approach these partnerships from the perspective and ask the question, is this a partnership that is going to cost us, our own people, cost our sovereignty, cost what does this cost us? And I think that's an important question that is often not asked, right? So Fanta, I mean, where do we go from here, right? This deal, I mean, it's the 5-6 companies shortlisted. Zum Lion is at the top of it. You're hoping that they don't get this opportunity, but yet still no Liberian company is included in the shortlist. So I want to use this opportunity to give you the chance to perhaps shine a light on some local companies that that you think should be considered, should be a part of this conversation at this stage, because it's not just about the companies that we don't want to work with, but it's also about who are the right companies on the ground that should be a part of this conversation.
Yeah. There are a few companies that I can think about, maybe a couple like at the top of my head, because I know when we were in the industry, there were three. There was a company called Liberia Sanitation. There was a company called NC Senator. I think one of them is probably out of business now due to the same Zum Lion corruption. They literally had to close up when that contract was taken away from Liberian companies and given to Zum Lion. They were not able to sustain their operations. And even the entity that I worked for at the time called Caspian Holdings, they too took a blow because we decided to fight. We decided to fight the government, which they did not expect, and took a significant hit because of that. So they're on the ground. There are new entities who've entered the space. Like since then, you have like the smaller CBEs right? So the knowledge of waste management is there. Would the existing companies benefit from additional capacity building? Absolutely. And this is not impossible to say, okay, you have to give you have to give this huge amount of money, right? The way these contracts works is when it is awarded, whoever becomes successful, right, receives a 25% ramp up or onboarding a fee, right? So the 25% of that amount is awarded to that company to build capacity, to ramp up, get equipment, like what have you. And that can happen. Look, we're so lucky, we're so fortunate to be on the coast. Liberia is on the Atlantic. To order equipment from anywhere, right, to arrive in Liberia takes less than 45 days. And in the interim, there are so many logistic partners in Liberia already, right? When you talk about dump trucks or yellow machines, right? Earth moving materials, they're already there. So you can immediately on day one start impacting the economy, right? By supporting other industries, supporting other businesses on day one. While say if you're going to order anything additional that you might need, it takes less than 45 days to arrive at your shore. So there is no excuse for this not going to a Liberian company, even if they say, if they come back and say, oh, they don't have the knowledge. I have the knowledge. My company didn't bid, or we didn't raise our hand, but I have the knowledge. My partner have the knowledge, and a few people we know on the ground. I will pro bono train any local entity to transfer that knowledge and ensure that they get this right, because I know how important this is for the people. I would do this as a citizen for my people. The Greek made this reference in describing the type of people in society. They categorize them in three categories. There are idiots, there are tribesmen or tribalists, and then there are citizens, right? And the idiots are essentially those who are just that, very idiotic, or just those who just don't care, right, about anything regarding the nation. They're very nonchalant and couldn't care less. And then there are the tribesmen or tribalists who make decisions, right, with tribal alignment. Nothing wrong with that, but we could do better. And then you have the citizens who are through and through, no matter what it is country first, right? In this case, is Liberia first. So as a citizen of Liberia, of Africa, my fight is Liberia first, Africa first, right? We ought to be a people who empower our own. Where there are opportunities to work with foreign entities, we will embrace it, we'll welcome it, we'll do that to build capacity. But there should never be a preference. There should never be a preference in any situation given to a foreign entity over the local entity if the local entity has the capacity to do that. Because what you do is you talk about building this middle class. When we see it outside of Africa, it's not rocket science to build your middle class. I mean, when you look at other countries, they provide subsidies to companies who to their citizens companies who even want to do business outside of their countries, right? Not even talking about within the country. They provide grants, they provide resources to help build capacity to train. Why is it that we don't understand we can replicate these very simple human capital building models? That's how we build our middle class. That's how we build a bigger, better Africa. It's not through prioritizing or the prioritization of foreign entities. And I will tell you why they do this. They do this for personal and selfish reasons, because the foreign entities will often give them the most kickback. The foreign entities will give them that immediate right check. They'll say, for example, this contract of $210 million. Imagine our representatives, our senators, our vice presidents, ministers getting 5% right away.
Yeah.
That's massive.
Yeah.
So it's selfish. They don't care about the people. And I think the people really, Liberians, Africans, need to stand up and say no more. We're not incapable, and we ought to be active participants in nation building. We cannot sit on the sidelines.
Fanta, so when did you decide to leave Liberia? I take it you're no longer there. You're back in the U.S. now, correct? Is that so? Why did you decide to just leave Liberia?
Yeah, so a couple of reasons. In 2014, I was there since '09, and then 2014 hit with the Ebola. I got really, really sick. Um, it wasn't Ebola, but I got really sick to where I was hospitalized for over 2 weeks. They couldn't
Mm.
figure out like what it was, and they tested for Ebola. It was not that. And my parents got just really worried about me, and they were like, we have to make this decision for it because if they had left with me, I didn't want to leave, even in that
Okay.
dire
So
situation.
even after
Yeah,
corruption
no, I
scandal,
slept
you still
around.
want, yeah.
No, and we look. I come from. I'm a descendant of warriors. I'm a
Hmm.
descendant of uh, royalty,
Hmm.
and we don't back down. Right? I've never knew Africans to be ones who run away from a challenge. In fact, where there is a problem, we're often running towards right. Our own inquisitiveness, right, drives us, and we're like, what's when everyone is running away from this saying, oh, there's this happening here, and everyone is like, don't go there. And we're like, no, we want to see. But I found that I'm driven by the courage um, that is instilled within me from God, first and foremost, and from my ancestors, because I am constantly familiarizing myself with who they were as a people, what they stood for. In fact, the first king of Liberia, King Saboso Kamara, is my direct ancestor. So
Oh,
when
wow.
you learn that type of history about your family, you don't back down
Hmm.
from a challenge,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It's ingrained in you. And look, each and every African, I know we have that within us, that warrior spirit. So for us to be dormant, for us to continue to allow ourselves to be doormats, right? And allow these geriatric leaders to make decisions that impact us, our generation the most. We too should be we should hold ourselves accountable, right? And we should say like, you know what, maybe then I didn't quite understand the impact, and I can say, look, I have another passport, I can stay here. No, you cannot, because if Trump rhetoric is to continue, he will kick you out even
Oh
as
my God.
naturalized citizen, right? Understand that, and it shouldn't take
Yeah.
a Trump to kick you
Yeah.
out. You should say, you
Yeah.
know what, Trump, thanks, but no thanks. I'm gone. Bye. And we can. It's not impossible to create the same to recreate the same lifestyles that we have here in Liberia. And I'll show you why is it that the Indians can go and create an even more comfortable life, right? They're all over Africa. The Lebanese can go and create an even more comfortable lives, right? Never wanting to return to their homes. The Chinese can go and never wanting to return. Americans can go, never wanting to return. Why is it that Africans, though, they feel so debilitated, right? Or debilitated to create that same luxury or comfort for themselves.
Hmm.
See more and more Africans now understanding that no, there are no limitations here except what we put on ourselves. And as they
Oof.
return, and I see them, right, creating these luxury lifestyles, not just luxury, but investing in the continent, whether it's agriculture or it's real estate. And most of them don't end up returning. And I would just want to continuously say this, or consistently say this to my brothers and sisters in the diaspora who have been thinking about it. I'm sure it's crossed your mind. Do not be discouraged. You are your own limitation. Remove that limitation, and no one can deport you from Africa. You can be deported.
Ooh, ooh. As you can probably tell, I'm trying really hard to contain myself because I love hearing you speak. I love hearing you speak. And I need to have you back on the show because your voice is needed. Your voice is needed, Fanta. So, to help us wrap up, what are you doing now? I'm curious to hear exactly what you're working on now, how you continue to, partner with Africa, invest in Africa. I'd love to just hear more about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So my most recent occupation was in the capacity of a senior vice president at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, leading large scale cybersecurity defense programs. I've since left a couple of months ago and created
Mm.
an entity called Generation Liberia. And Generation Liberia seeks to rewrite the narrative for Africans, right? Giving our people the opportunity for a different alternative to say, no, this is what they say about you, but what do you say about you, right?
Mm,
And
mm.
essentially, I would sum it up. I would sum it up as this: um, this entity seeks to solve um, complex problems, right, with simple solutions. So big problems, simple solutions. They say we cannot feed ourselves, food self-sufficiencies, food security. We have arable lands, right, on the continent to where with something as simple as irrigation, we will be able to produce more than enough food because often our production cycles are limited to just like the rainy season, say for something like rice, or the dry season for other crops. And to say that no, we can produce food all season long. So essentially, Generation Liberia is seeking to do that. And then I'm partnering up with other movements, right? Because once again, no longer sitting back and being idle stakeholders or
Yeah.
just spectators, right? We have to get engaged. I'm partnering up with a movement that I believe is going to be massive. Is going to truly be the ushering of a new era, and I'm so excited about that. When I can speak about it, I will absolutely love to be back
Please
here, like
come here. Let this be the first place you speak about this when you're ready to launch it. I cannot wait.
yeah, it's about
Wow.
aligning with movements that will empower us, right, to introduce the type of transformative change that we truly deserve and really do away with the old guards. So I'm really really like excited about that, and I don't want to forget this.
Yeah.
Adira has been instrumental in setting
Mm.
this up. I really want to thank Sade Disu and her company, Adira, for putting
Yeah.
this together. She is,
She's
and
a pioneer.
yeah,
Adira is a
yeah,
pioneer.
yeah,
Yeah.
she is fantastic. She is fantastic. So anyone looking for branding, PR, marketing, she is the company. She is very familiar with the continent, and she's done so much work globally. So Adire is
Yeah.
definitely the place to go for that. And she's just a wholesome person. So I
She
didn't want
is.
to leave
No,
this.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I need to have her on the show because we actually go way back from for those of you who don't know, she is the founder of Africa Fashion Week
Yeah,
in New York, and it
yeah,
was groundbreaking when that initiative was launched. So I'm
yeah,
gonna bring her, and then we'll catch up. We're long overdue for a catch up. But
yeah.
Fanta, this has been just incredible. I would love to have you back on the show as a a guest contributor. I think your voice is so needed, and particularly for the topics that we're discussing on this show, how we build global Black power in
Mm-hmm.
these unprecedented times that we're
Mm-hmm.
living in. So please accept my invitation, my public invitation for you to come on the breakdown, and let's have these conversations together. But thank you so much. It's been truly incredible, and thank you for your passion, for your conviction, for your strength, because it is not easy to do what you're doing. So I commend you,
Thank you. Thank you
and
so
I'm really looking forward to having you back.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandra. This has been awesome. Like platforms like yours, and you're doing exactly that, right? No longer relying on the traditional media, right, to share our stories and have these discussions because we know most of the traditional medias push propaganda and they're
Yeah.
propagandic methods of the old guard. So your platform is absolutely groundbreaking as well and critical to this movement. So thank you for all that you do.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you about that White House moment where Mr. Trump, President Trump, told your president that he speaks very good English. I'm sure if he was here right now, he'd be saying the same thing about you. Where are you from? You speak very good English. What did
Yeah.
you think about that exchange?
Yeah, I thought it was look, Trump is Trump, right? And for us who are familiar with his
Yeah.
a level of engagement, like we sort of expect that. I think it was a missed opportunity for the African presidents who were in the room. Look,
Hmm.
us as a continent, we speak so many different languages, right? And in two folds, it denigrated other leaders by saying, oh, because you speak French or you speak non-English, right? Or English is not your primary language, so therefore you don't deserve to be as heard. And then for the Liberian president, I don't think it was a proud moment. It was a kowtowing moment, right? And he kept saying, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah,
That is not a place of power. That's not where we need to be as African leaders. We need to be absolutely confident in who we are, because once again, we come from a place of power. We are not poor, right? Our mentality is poor, our mindset is poor, and we see that time and time again in our leaders and them representing us in that way. And going back to why we need to step up and say no, we are going to like step aside, grandpa, right? Go retire. Let them.
Did you say grandpa?
Yes, I did. Step aside, grandpa, right? And yeah, step aside and let us show you how to negotiate from a place of power. We have so many resources. He could have, started across from Trump. Something he said was, "Oh, come and survey our resources. We have so many."
Oh my God, mind blowing, mind blowing.
Inviting like the thief to like come to your house and say, "I just got a new like 70 inch screen. I just had a new safe, right? Come and like survey like my safe." What are you doing in this day and age? There are technologically advanced geological tools, right? To do surveying. Why would you invite your colonizer to come back? Come steal more from me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't this opportunity for us. And we know Trump is Trump, but it wasn't a proud moment for Africa. And the whole English conversation was not one to like. No.
Yeah. The way I described that meeting was that it was the new scramble for Africa, except this time our leaders were making the pitching their own nations and their own resources. Fanta, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time. I am sure this will not be the last. I have a feeling you'll be back on the breakdown soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to Chris. He's such an awesome coordinator and producer. He's been truly awesome in coordinating with me.
Oh, wonderful. No, thanks for the feedback. I'm sure he'd be delighted to hear.